Hello and welcome everyone to the TechEd session on cross-system workflow to streamline HR process. My name is Diptosh Sarkar and I am a product manager in SAP SuccessFactors working on integration topics between SuccessFactors, Employee Central and other SAP products. Along with me, I have Thomas from Employee Central engineering team who will be joining me in giving this session. So I will start with the background and the business context, and then we'll cover the overview of the cross-system workflow solution for SAP SuccessFactors, and then I will hand it over to Thomas for the architecture and the demo. So as you see in the slide, every customer will have their own cloud transition journey, and we realize that replacing an existing HR applications in on-premise and moving that to cloud takes time. Our recommendation to customers is that the first step is moving the core HR solution to Employee Central. With this, customers would be getting a modern core HR solution, but still they would need to run the end-to-end business applications like new hire, reduction of working time, then promotion, which starts in Employee Central and then ends with the follow-up activity and payroll. So basically, with the hybrid deployment model, it introduces some complexity in handling or managing the end-to-end business applications. So as you see in the slide, with the hybrid landscape, Employee Central can be integrated with different SAP applications, different payroll applications, and here we have business technology platform that provides integration capabilities in order to do that. We realize that our existing on-premise customers are running a highly integrated building block with the core HR, payroll, and time in the same system. With moving to cloud, the data integration capabilities that we have right now is quite solid and good, but where we are currently lacking is with the process integration. So basically right now, integrating between the different process steps that runs in Employee Central and across different applications like payroll, we do not have any end-to-end glue between these process steps. And this is what cross-system workflow is targeting to address. So with cross-system workflow, we are going to automate and streamline the HR process that runs across multiple solutions in a hybrid landscape. It is not replacing data integration, rather it is complementing it. So in order to do that, we are using BTP workflow, so which is part of the SAP process automation solution as our orchestration engine, which will orchestrate between the different steps running in core HR and payroll. So here we are deeply integrating with the Employee Central workflow. So here Employee Central workflow acts as a trigger. So whenever an EC workflow is initiated, then the underlying orchestration workflow in BTP gets triggered. And based on the actions taken on the workflow in Employee Central, correspondingly, the status is synced to the BTP workflow. And along with that, we are not building any new UIs or not reinventing any new UIs. Rather, we are deep linking the existing screens for data maintenance in EC and in on-premise. So here we are using for ERP, HCM, data maintenance, we are using process and forms or HR roadmap forms. So that is optional based on the customer choice. So as you see here, we are talking about volume business. So on an average, an HR admin gets around 1,000 processes per day if there is an organization for almost 100K employees. And here we are adding a common process integration layer on top of it. With the cross-system workflow, there are multiple customer benefits. So the first one would be the common process layer. So with the same process integration layer, we will be able to integrate with multiple payroll systems, even non-HR solutions. And this will be enabled by the workflow capability within the SAP process automation. And also the transparency of the end-to-end process steps is improved. So now HR admins can check the status, the processor, and the related dates along with it during maintaining the data. And also they get a look on the replication status directly from the worklist UI. So this helps also in resolution of the errors while managing a process. And we have also given a claim functionality where an admin can notify other admins of the admin group that already somebody is working on a task. This also increases productivity because right now admins are monitoring multiple inboxes in multiple applications, but with the worklist UI that we are providing, it will be like a key entry point for HR admins and shared service center users, where they can do their daily task with directly from the worklist UI itself. Then I hand over to Thomas for the architecture slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Diptosh. Hi, I'm Thomas, and I'm one of the core developers for the cross-system workflow solution. On the following slides, I will give you some insights into the high-level architecture of our solution. As mentioned by Diptosh, we are leveraging the business technology platform and more specifically, the SAP Build Process Automation solution. This solution combines several capabilities such as workflow, business rules, and process visibility. We use the workflow capability as backbone to orchestrate process steps across multiple systems. In the workflow models, we define attributes and context data which are exposed to the worklist UI. The attributes are also used to drive the cross-system processes in our backend systems. Additionally, these attributes can be used to control access to the process items. For example, to restrict the access of certain HR administrators to specific countries or business units. Business rules are used to have automated decision-making, which uses decision tables and a vocabulary of input and output parameters. For example, we use business rules to determine if the follow-up process in SAP ERP HCM is done with processes and forms or HR roadmap forms. Using business rules to configure the cross-system process makes this solution highly flexible, configurable, and extensible. The cross-system worklist and details are displayed with the standard UI provided by Process Visibility. We configure process visibility scenarios, which are the basis to visualize cross-system workflows on the UI. Process Visibility does provide end-to-end insights for these processes, as well as performance indicators, for example, when the due date for a process item is already passed. Now, let's have a look at the building blocks of our solution. The central piece is the so-called process controller, which is built on the workflow capability of the SAP Build Process Automation solution. Additionally, we have various so-called phase controllers which interact with different connected backend systems. For example, the phase controllers for processes and forms and HR roadmap forms connect to ERP HCM, while the data replication phase controller interacts with SuccessFactors to monitor the status of the data replication. Currently, these three phases are provided by us as standard implementation. However, with our flexible extension concept, you can easily add your custom phases. For example, for covering a procurement step in SAP Ariba solutions in a new hire workflow. The process controller as the main application interacts with SuccessFactors to receive the employee data and workflow request information, since SuccessFactors is the leading system in our scenarios. We use the employee data for permission control on the worklist and for driving the backend processing inside our workflow. The business rules capability is used to configure and extend the workflow application according to your business needs. The worklist and details UI is the standard UI provided by Process Visibility capability. We deliver a single visibility scenario which contains all cross-system workflow items. This is an example data flow for a cross-system workflow. It contains SuccessFactors, ERP HCM, and BTP. The cross-system process is kicked off in SuccessFactors by a data change, which triggers a workflow. Workflow changes in SuccessFactors are synchronized to the workflow capability of SAP Build Process Automation by an integration flow running on SAP Cloud Integration. The workflow capability offers automatic data synchronization to process visibility. Once the workflow data is synchronized, the process item is visible on the central worklist UI. Now, HR administrators can view the process item and navigate directly from the central worklist to the workflow UI in SuccessFactors. By using the identity authentication service, no additional login action is required. Once an HR administrator approves the workflow in SuccessFactors, the changes are again synchronized via cloud integration to the workflow and process visibility capabilities on BTP. The scheduled data replication distributes the changes from SuccessFactors to ERP HCM. HR administrators can view the current status of the data replication on the central worklist. Once the data replication has been successfully completed, the workflow capability on BTP calls an API in ERP HCM, which triggers the processes and forms workflow. When the workflow has been successfully started, ERP HCM sends an update to BTP, and the worklist UI is updated with the link to the processes and forms UI. With single sign-on configured, a payroll administrator can directly access the processes and forms UI from the central worklist and maintain payroll-relevant data. Once the task is done, ERP HCM provides an update to BTP, and in the typical scenario, the cross-system workflow ends here. However, since we have a flexible extension concept in place, which allows additional phases to be configured that start after the ERP maintenance step, more phases could follow. Now, we will have a look at a demo that showcases two sample scenarios.
In this demo, we will be looking at two typical scenarios for hybrid cross-system HR workflows. For both of them, the scenario will be initiated in SuccessFactors. During this demo, we will be using multiple personas with different roles, which we now will quickly go through. First, we have David Seidel, a senior software engineer who is the target for our workflow actions. Next up is Josephine Meyer, who currently is the manager of David and initiates the workflows. Then we have Frieda Neumann, an HR administrator who is responsible for handling HR requests in SuccessFactors. And last, there's Mark Richter, a payroll administrator who is handling payroll-related data changes in SAP HCM. When we are switching personas, we will indicate this with the graphic you see at the bottom right. As you see, we currently take the role of Josephine, David's manager. Josephine has decided to promote David to a higher role because of his exceptional work in the past few years. She opens his profile and initiates the data change for November 1st, 2022. To trigger the promotion process, Josephine changes the job classification from senior engineer to engineering manager. Also, for this promotion, David's pay grade has to be adjusted from development to management. Last but not least, under compensation, his base salary is increased by 10% and the data is saved. When we check the workflow participants, we see that the HR administrators Frieda Neumann and Liam Wolf are responsible for approving that request. Josephine submits the workflow and her work is done. We will now switch to the HR administrator Frieda Neumann. Frieda is logged into SuccessFactors and on her homepage, she can see the custom card for the cross-system workflow solution and opens it. Here, Frieda has insights in all open workflow requests regarding her role as HR administrator. However, she does not only see the processes that she needs to take action on, but also these which have been processed by her and her HR colleague in the past. These processes are still active. Some of them currently need approval in SuccessFactors, while others are already in the data replication phase or need to be processed by a payroll administrator in SAP HCM. This way, Frieda has full end-to-end visibility of all processes that she is part of in her role as HR administrator. Frieda selects the entry for the promotion process of David Seidel and can see the current and upcoming phases in the detailed section on the right. To indicate to her colleague that she is already working on this process, Frieda clicks the Claim Process button, which updates the processor field from the generic HR administrators group to her username. Frieda then clicks on the currently active phase and jumps directly to the workflow detail page in SuccessFactors. Here, she approves the workflow. With that, the process is finished in SuccessFactors and David's employee data has been updated. Frieda refreshes the detail view and sees that the first phase has automatically been completed. Now, the process is in the data replication phase, which syncs the data from SuccessFactors to SAP HCM. There is no active processor as the replication is automatically performed based on a schedule set in the standard SAP Cloud Integration Content Package. The cross-system workflow solution checks periodically via the Data Replication Monitor or Data API if the replication to SAP HCM has been completed. Once it has been completed, the process moves on to the next phase. Depending on the configuration, here either a SAP Processes and Forms-based workflow is triggered in SAP HCM or a HR roadmap form process is generated. In case of this promotion process, a Processes and Forms workflow is triggered via API. Based on rules in SAP HCM, the processor is determined and sent back to our solution. As we can see here, the next group responsible for processing this entry are the payroll administrators. Therefore, we will now switch to the payroll administrator Mark Richter, who opens the work list from his SuccessFactors homepage as well. Mark is responsible for payroll-related changes for Germany and Austria, and only has the permission to see processes related to employees from these countries. Due to that, on his work list, we see less entries than Frida did. Mark selects the entry for the promotion of David and opens the detail view. Once again, he claims the process for himself to indicate to the other payroll administrators that he is working on it. Mark clicks on the Process and Forms link and is directly sent to the Fiori form. David's new position does not only come with the increase of his base salary, but also with a yearly vacation bonus. As this is a recurring payment, it is not maintained in SuccessFactors, but only in SAP HCM. The base salary increase that has been applied in SuccessFactors and has been replicated to SAP HCM is also visible on this form. Mark maintains the bonus amount, first payment date, and the annual payment interval, and clicks on Send. The data is now stored in the respective info types in SAP HCM. Back on the work list, Mark refreshes the detail view and sees that the workflow has been completed successfully. He closes the detail view and refreshes the list as well. Mark notices that the entry is gone from the list of open processes, and he can focus on his next tasks. The next scenario that we want to have a look at is the home office process. We will once again take up the role of David Seidel's manager, Josephine Meyer, who is already accessing his profile. David's company has decided to switch to a remote-only setup for his location, and therefore his contract type needs to be changed to home office. Not much is different on the SuccessFactors side in this scenario, and therefore we will go through this quite quickly. Josephine changes the contract type for David starting March 2023 and submits the workflow. The workflow participants are once again the two already known HR administrators. Next up, Frida Neumann, our HR administrator, logs into her work list from the SuccessFactors homepage. She sees the item for David and decides to approve it right away, since she is currently receiving many of these requests because of the closing of David's location. She refreshes the detail view and notices that the data replication must have just ran and that the process is already in the HR roadmap form phase. For the home office process on SAP HCM side, an HR roadmap form is used to maintain additional payment and miscellaneous data instead of SAP processes and forms. Now, Mark Richter, the payroll administrator, comes into play again. This time, Mark accesses the worklist from his Fiori Launchpad favorites section. The cross-system workflow solution tile can be embedded anywhere. For example, as already seen, the SuccessFactors homepage, the Fiori Launchpad, or WorkZone. Mark notices the new item for David Seidel and opens the process. He clicks on the face and the HR roadmap form opens. Here, Mark has to maintain some additional data relevant for the home office process. First, David will receive a monthly allowance for additional costs that he faces with his home office contract in the future, for example, to cover expenses for internet and electricity. Second, Mark has to maintain the tools that David is taking home with him from the office, in this case, the employee's laptop. Mark submits the form and the data is saved to SAP HCM. For HR roadmap forms, there is currently no automatic sync back to the cross-system workflow solution. Therefore, Mark needs to do one additional manual step, which is clicking the button in the detail view to finish this phase. Once he has clicked it, Mark refreshes the detail view to find the process marked as completed.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the demo. Now, here are some great learning offerings to complement your conference. You can prepare for certification in development roles with 3 SAP learning journeys and live learning sessions led by SAP experts. Save with an exclusive SAP TechEd certification offer that came in your SAP TechEd registration email. Connect with the experts, expand your network, and share your knowledge and experiences with others in the SAP community, or network in a moderated SAP learning group to get your learning questions answered. Find all the great content at learning.sap.com/TechEd. Thank you for attending this session and enjoy the rest of TechEd.